when I talk about this, but we're on the same page,
Okay.
and that's good.
All right.
Okay. It is basically the top of the hour, 6 o'clock on October 20th, 2020, and the City of Billerica Historical Preservation Commission is now in session. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have the agenda in front of you. We have a motion to adopt the agenda.
I motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Unanimous. Okay. If you had a chance to read over the minutes.
I did.
David?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Not that
We have a motion to accept the minutes
I
as...
motion to accept the minutes. I motion to accept the minutes.
Motion, okay, there's a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Do we have a
Yeah,
second?
yeah.
Second by Sarah. All in favor? Unanimous. Great.
I'm
Okay.
I'm excited.
Moving right along, since we don't have anybody here for public comment, we can skip that one. Reports of officers of board and standing committees. Before Ron gives us something, I want to be able to say a few things, okay? I sort of talked to Sarah, and I talked to Ron yesterday about this. I'm going in for surgery on November 12th to repair surgery that was done 7 years ago. And so there's a great possibility that I won't be home for the next meeting. And Ron and I talked about the fact that he's going to be telling you what he's been doing, which I think is important. And you know, Ron is worried because it's not complete yet. But my point to him was, that's okay. We need to know what's going on and have an idea of where he is, and if there's anything that may be missing that we can call or do something for him to help before he finishes up, because he's got his hands full. And I really mean it. If you had listened to any of the city council meetings, and you know what's happening with planning and zoning, and with all the other things going on,
They putting up
you've
new
got somebody here who is right in the middle of it. And trying to do that and everything else is kind of
A lot of new
overpowering.
construction going on too.
Yeah, he actually, Ron, at this point, probably, and Kirsten too, probably need to be 3 people, instead of 1 trying to do all of that. And I want to tell you that, apart from that, I went to Powell Park Thursday. It was mentioned on city council, it's on the was on the website, there's another one coming up on the 29th at the library from 6 to 8 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 couple and me. The rest were Bobby and Tom and the presenters and gentlemen from the fire department. And I want to tell you that the presentation that they had was absolutely awesome.
I saw
It
that.
took the information from when we had public meetings before. I guess I was fortunate that the guy who is the head of it, Richard, he took me around for each one of them. I found things out that I didn't know were going to be, an extra roundabout, which is going to help me and the people in my area at Liberty and Edge Road at the V,
Yeah.
so that you don't worry about coming over here. So many things going on. And yet, and the overlay of how all the things, that from the walkway, the parkway, the roundabout, the
Is that at the center of the gas station?
it is awesome. Anyway, if you get a chance, please show up on the 29th from 6 to 8 o'clock at the library, because he's going to be doing something similar, but it will be more in tune with Mirror Lake, and for those of us who live in that particular area, it might be interesting for you to see that. But I think that it's important for us as commissioners, because all of this is indirectly related to the
It's
historical
all- yeah,
preservation
yeah.
as to what they want to do and how it's going to be incorporating Fullerville and some of those areas. It's really important that we know what's going on, correct?
Correct. Yes.
The other thing is, as I started to tell you, no streaming video for the commissioners. However, what I learned at the conference which was awesome. And on Tuesday, on Tuesday, we had 10 o'clock in the morning negotiating for preservation, and I've got tons of notes on that. They may be putting it up. I'm hoping they'll put it up for those who were not at the conference. But again, these are things that, even though we may not have anything, Ron and I mentioned that he and Kirsten don't have to be here, but if there's an agenda printed, which there will be, that gives us a chance legally. My concern was that if there's nobody here, can we still have a meeting? And after I talked to James, he said, yes. The only time you want to make sure you have a tape recorder is if you have somebody who's coming in and is a little contentious, and you need to make sure that you're recording what he or she may say. He said it really is important to get all those little nuances. Don't depend just on minutes, because it's going to have a general type of thing pretty much, but not the individual conversation. And so he said just have a small tape recorder going so that if there is an appeal, you can go back and listen to it. And so that was his thing. But he talked about all the legal proceedings, and the title of his thing at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 25th was Keeping Your Commission Legal. And I have something like 5 pages of notes on both sides just from his lecture alone. So those are things that we want to be aware of, in the future. But if there happens to be all of us here, and we've got a quorum, there is no problem with us just talking and looking. Which I'm going to recommend is that you make sure that you have your books with you, because one of the things that we need to be doing, and that was again reinforced at the conference, was know what's in your book.
Right.
Understand the architecture, understand the meaning of those different things, and we can go through them so that if, in chance, those things come up, we don't have to start scrambling and say what, or depend on somebody else,
Right.
because we are supposed to know it. And so that is what we can do, and what we wanted to do in the very beginning, to use this as a learning tool as well.
Take
So
one chapter at a time or something.
something like that, yeah, part of it. So that's what we will be doing. When we have Ron here and we have other people who will be presenting, then of course we can
Correct.
save that for another time.
That's a great idea.
But it's really important that we go over this. And I said, one of the ones that was really important, and I don't know how many of you have been to Bransonsville.
Who?
Dr. Lisa Branton, she had a straight out of OUTTA, out of Bransonville, and she talked about the history that's in there. It's African American community, and she was absolutely spellbinding, but she talked about all of the different parts and cultures that are in that. So if you get a chance to go to Bransonville, now we're not talking about Georgia as much, we're also talking about the Carolinas, but it was really, really good. Modernism, and the other thing I'm going to quickly show you, Alan saw this last time, because I belong to the Georgia Trust, this one was from summer, and it has all of the 2020 preservation awards, so that you can see what was awarded and why. They were talking about it a little bit at the conference. This is the newest one that came out, telling the Flora story.
Is that the ones that have the
And-
homes
and,
for sale in the rear?
I have donated a copy that hasn't come in yet, but to the Billerica Library, because I think that it's important to do that. And I also, The American Spirit is a magazine that comes out from DAR. They're not always apropos, but this one has historic homes in it. And I'm also giving a subscription to the library on this one as well, because it has grants that even the DAR award to cities and communities. This one also has, and I need to show it to Elisa Doyle,
I've been in that one.
because it's on the cemeteries. And this Saturday, like past Saturday, 6 of us were at the Garden of Memory, which is behind the African American Masonic Temple and the other cemetery that's older, which we're going to be doing. And we planted plants. It's the 3rd cemetery that the city owns. and there are other historical sites in there. I was surprised to see tombstones in the cemetery above that from the late 1800s. And that's not one that we've talked about being a local historical area. However, the grant in Georgia for African-American cemeteries was already awarded this time. And so what we're going to do as Friends of the Cemetery and as part of the Cemetery Commission is to write a grant next year to help improve and fix the African-American cemetery behind the school, because it is in dire need of repair. Once that's done, it's a possibility, because of the dates in there, Ron, that we could think about putting that as a historical site as well, because it is, it has tombstones in there, again, from the 1800s. So very important that we do that as well. And so if you,
Is that city owned?
Yeah, the Garden of Rest is city.
well, the Garden of Rest is behind it. The Garden of Rest is completely different. It's owned by, the Garden of Rest is owned by the city. There are 7 acres there behind the school as well. But if you go to the school, okay, right behind the school is a fence, where the Garden of Rest is. You have to get to the Garden of Rest by going around. But you can get to the African American cemetery by parking right at the church and behind the school.
Oh, you're talking about the community cemetery.
And that's the one that we want to help write a grant for, possibly to see, because it's a grant specifically for African American cemeteries.
But is that a city-owned cemetery?
Not yet.
No,
It's not. Oh,
No.
is the city interested in buying it?
From what I heard about from Doyle, Miss Doyle, she said that they were doing research on it, come to find out no one really owns it, even though the church oversees it, they don't technically.
Under
Yeah.
50,000, I think.
now there were probably about 15 people out there Saturday morning, because the whole family seemed to be putting in a brick wall around their plot. So they were doing that. But these are things that we need to be thinking about as commissioners, and particularly for HPC, because, you know, we can be that extra set of eyes for Ron, for Kirsten, for Tom, for all the other people in there. So please be thinking about that.
How hard would it be for me to,
Can you lower your mask so I can hear better?
how hard would it be for me to get a list from you of the places you're working on so I could help you? And it would help my group to see like the Indian trails that are around there, and for us to do hikes before the build starts.
I'm just taking notes, you guys. For me, where we're at right now, which I'll kind of go into a little bit more on once in the presentation itself, but we're really just in a waiting period. We're waiting for the state to get back to us. If I was to just sum it up in a nutshell, we sent off the pre-application for this district, we sent out for the South District rather, and we're literally waiting still. It's a 75-day review period for them. We submitted, and I couldn't believe it either.
July.
75 days to review that information. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of information. It was all boxed up, but 75 days is a long time to review an application,
2.5 months.
or pre-application at that, not even the real deal. But we submitted that on September 8th. So it's been a while. It's been radio silence. They got back to me acknowledging that they received it on September 28th. So it took 20 days just to acknowledge that they got it. So to answer your question though, Sarah, right now, like once we receive that information back, is going to tell us what we need to do do next. And that's for the national designation. For the South Side. So for the local designation for the South Side, most of that, if not all of that work, is actually already done as a part of the pre-application. So the goal is, and you'll see in the presentation, the goal is really to move both of those pieces at the same time, and so we're not doing double the work later on, and I'll explain that. I'll explain what I mean and flesh that out, that thought, as we go on.
Well, I was talking about, where I sent you an email about the rock, the flat rock on Pumpkin Town Road,
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that has the etchings.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So our group doesn't really know what's happening next within the next month, because we want to go see it.
Okay.
So who would I speak to get the information so we could go out there?
You probably want to talk to Tom himself, really.
Yeah.
Who owns the property though?
Well, I assume that whoever was building the roundabout bought it up because they demolished the house that it was in front of it.
Okay, so then that would be DOT.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the
own it.
map that I gave you, Sarah and I, over a year ago, she came over and we marked, and Sarah marked all the Indian trails on that, remember?
Mhm.
We took a magic marker and marked all the Indian trails that we could see on that map.
Mm.
And they're all already marked, because we sat down and did that. So those are already there. All we need to do is to take a look at that map again, but that's one that you have,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
All right.
All right. Is there anything else? Okay.
No, I think so.
You want us to come back?
Oh,
in?
yes, there is one thing. I'm sorry. There's the roundabout at 101 in Rockmart Road. And if you recall, a couple months ago, there was a report that was issued. It was an addendum report. I think this is like the third or fourth addendum from the state's representative for historic preservation and environmental. They're the one that was hired for the project for the bypass route, to do the historic survey, if you will, of the area to see if there's anything that's historic in nature. So they basically just doubled down on their negative.
Original.
Yeah, original. They didn't really change anything at all. So, I mean, like I said before, when they issued the last one, that's going to become problematic with Fullerville in the future, and our ability to have a historic district, especially a state or national district. So, I mean, they just really just tore our survey apart and questioned its, I don't want to say its authenticity, but it questioned
Right.
its what it was based off of,
Like you're
basically.
trying to come back and overlay it, over that. Like
Yeah,
it's not true.
so it's, I
They
mean,
don't
we're
seem
still
to
gonna
listen.
try
They
anyway.
don't
We're gonna
care.
keep going
That's the
as
thing.
if it never happened, and I'll probably have to put a separate narrative together to explain to this. You don't wanna put too much attention on it either, because then it's gonna be heavily scrutinized, so it's a fine line that I'm gonna have to walk
Right.
on that one, so.
We talked about that, but, and the idea is that, my point initially was, but we know that some of that information is wrong, and even a couple of times when Renee said she knew it was wrong, even on some of these things. But they're not really interested in that, and like Ron said, we don't wanna bring attention to some of these areas, because then they get into too much, so.
Well, if they have it on file already with the state, then.
They don't need your,
Well, they're gonna
opinion.
base anything we submit to them off of that report, because it's the newest historical, I guess, I'm using the term survey, it's probably not the correct term, but they surveyed the area and they have the report that they issued and they give it to the state, and it's the newest thing that the state has, so they're of course going to base, anybody would do that, would base it off of that report.
And see, and after this year, we are not in compliance with the state, because our survey is now old.
I checked on that too. Yeah, our survey is good. The state allows up to like 15 years, I think it was, for a survey. I emailed
Okay,
down.
They told us 10 to 12.
I thought it was.
Yeah, I even emailed Three Rivers and a couple other places too to confirm, and they all came back. The state themselves came back and said 15 years.
Okay, so they're changing.
Yeah,
that.
and that was from
Because we learned at the
HBD.
conference that it was 10 to 12 years at max.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, they because I saw competing numbers. I thought it was 10 years. Somewhere else in one of their blog posts or something, it said like 12 years, and then we were able to narrow it down to it's actually 15 years. So, but we
Is
do
part of that
have.
because of the changes that are always taking place at the state?
I have no
people
idea
like-
why. I mean, I think that they just. I mean, you have to think that there's a million tiny towns with like 2,000 people, 3,000 people in them. They can't afford to do a survey every 10 years.
Right.
They can probably not afford to do a survey every 30 years. So,
The
Or
funny
don't
part
even-
of it is,
or
though, is
don't
that
even
at the
have a
conference,
commission,
at the
period,
conference,
so.
they show all of them, and they put in check mark, complied, remember? They had all of, and I mean, we were listed as well for Carroll County and the city of Villa Rica. They actually showed everybody in attendance who had their surveys and who needed to have them and which ones were outdated?
Well, the survey, the thing is, with these surveys, you have to think about the cost of them, right? So you're looking at about $500 per property, and if we have, 5,000 properties in the city, or I'm sorry, let's say 3,000, let's lower that a little bit, 3,000 properties that might need to be designated.
But
a
Paul
lot of
came
money.
here and spoke to us early on, like about 3 years ago, and then at a Three River Conference, they mentioned that they could do it and help us with it, and it would be free, and we wouldn't have to have the money. So according to Paul, we could very well have them assist in a survey.
And there was something in Rome that led to the fact that there was some type of assistance on that, to get in compliance if we
Yeah,
needed it.
there's different types of grant schemes that are out there. I emailed Paul Jarrell and asked him about, like costs in our region and, who can do the work and things like that. And he pointed me to a consultant, a couple consultants that are in our area, so I don't know if they're doing that anymore or not. I'm sure we don't want to use West Georgia again. I don't know if things have changed there or not, but
They said something
Well,
about,
the problem with West Georgia, and again, Dr. Cleary and I are friends, and I spoke to her over a year ago now, because I told her that I had some, before Ron even came, some concerns about the survey. And she admitted that yes, when you do a survey using college students in a graduate class, and you've got so many of them that she didn't always check to verify what they wrote, because again, that's why we need to make sure that we understand the architecture and what they are, because some of the things that they wrote on there were only going by hearsay or by what a neighbor
Right.
said. And so that's the problem with the survey that is done at West Georgia or any of the other universities, when graduate students are being used and not people who are already certified to do the surveys.
And they basically just took the information off the text test or
it's
website.
like Wikipedia, it's just basically whatever they come up with.
Exactly.
They do the tombstones the same way down in New Orleans. They use the college students to find the backgrounds.
Mm-hmm,
No, Lord.
yes.
And whatever they come up with, they're still tracing heritages and tombstones to try to get the local tombstones areas designated so they can sell the plots. And unless they have a living family member, they can't. So they're trying to trace heritage all the way up. And they're using
Yeah, I mean,
college students to do that.
well, and here I am, Professor Emerita, working in research for years and years and years, and
Whatever.
I see the cheating and the fudging that goes on with.
We got a freshman, whatever.
So I know that, I mean, and I only taught graduate students.
All right.
Graduate students are bad. Anyway, do you want us to sit down there, Ron?
whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to just swivel your chairs around and get the big screen experience, or if you want to sit back here with us, that's cool to me. Whatever you want. All right, you're like me. I gotta go to the front row in the movie theater. Okay. Gotta be wide-eyed, like.
Okay.
All right, you can go ahead. We need a signal, right? I wish we had a little signal.
Just put this up here and you just do the clicking. It's that much more
Do the
simple.
clicker.
All right, whatever you say, ma'am. See, this isn't gonna work. I don't want to pull the thing out.
Yeah, just lay down. That's good. That's good.
Not really, but. All right, so I came up with a proposed order of designating these, right? That would make sense to everybody, make sense to us. There we go. That would make sense to us, and something, being that we've already started on the two on the top here, the South Villarica Commercial District and the North Villarica Commercial District, we should probably continue with those, obviously, since we're pretty much, we have North District already partially designated. We already have it designated as nationally, but not locally. And South Villarica Commercial District, obviously, we're in the pre-application phase on that one. And this is an order, this is just a proposed order. I'm not making the rules here or anything like that. It's just something that made some sort of logical sense to me. And especially with everything that's going on with the Fullerville that we just talked about. So we kind of may want to just jump on that right away after these two are done. So I have maps of all of these in here, just so you can kind of see their rough boundaries and the like. But obviously the South Villarica District's not designated yet nationally or locally. There's a pre-application that we sent off to the state on September 8th. We're still waiting for that response. And potentially on the December 15th HPC agenda for local and national, we're hoping to get local and national designation to you guys at that time. And in January, we're hoping that will be passed by the city council. And again, that January 12th date, I just went off the second week of January. I don't know when they're going to do reorg. Like in 2020, they moved the reorg meeting up a week, and it was a whole bunch of stuff going on. So I assume they might do that again. This is only my second.
We will probably have to have a meeting in between time for the community, right? Between December and January.
No.
We won't need that?
No, because the December meeting for HPC is is your public meeting. That's the public notice meeting.
Okay, so,
But I'll once we get through these districts how I broke them down, I'll explain that part though.
so then we can do that just like city council did lately with all of this?
Basically, yeah.
Because it's open to, they did their
Mhm.
public meeting in the meeting.
Right.
Okay. we can
That's
do
the way it should be done.
Yeah,
Uh,
that'll be good. That will help. Okay, great.
The North Villarica Commercial District is already listed on the National Registry since 2002, not designated locally. And this one, I'm potentially hoping to get this in January 19th HBC meeting and February for City Council. Again, this actually should just say local, not national, because since it's already nationally designated. So I apologize about that. So I don't have any dates for the rest of these because it's really fluid, obviously, holding us to a strict timeline when there's so many different things going on right now is going to be a little difficult for the rest of these districts, but I'm hoping that we can do Fullerville. All I did with these maps is I traced out the areas that are already in our survey booklet, our resources survey. And I just duplicated them back on here, so I haven't changed any of the properties. Some of the properties have changed on us, though. Some of them have been merged, some of them have been split. I maybe counted 5 or 6 of them that were like that when I was tracing this.
You missed one.
Which
This
one?
house right here.
That one wasn't included in the survey book.
Why not?
I have no idea. No idea.
That's the oldest one over there.
Yeah, it's there.
It's still
Yeah,
standing.
it was just sold maybe a couple months ago. It was just sold.
And we have you've got the water tower that people are concerned about who lived in Fullerville forever. And then you've got the old city hall in Fullerville. Those are sites that people keep calling me or asking me or sending me email. Can we please have that designated as a historical site?
Well, they don't want to look at the report then that we got from the bypass folks, because they're saying they don't have any integrity left that's historical. They've been altered tremendously.
That's what we were on our last meeting.
Yeah, that has been altered a million times, and the houses surrounding it all through Rockmart Road have been altered, which they have. I mean, there's houses with stucco and enclosed front porches and vinyl siding, and I mean, it's true. I mean, what they said is true. They-
There's only 3 structures
But the
really.
city
It's the-
hall has not changed.
I mean, the city hall, the old school, and the water tower, and the jail, I think are 4 of the
Oh, yeah.
structures in Fullerville that need to be saved.
Instead of doing the
Agreed.
district, why won't we-
And jail is already designated as a local, that was in our first batch.
That might be
That's
something we want
already
to talk
there.
about.
But the city hall, the old city hall, there's no reason why that can't be designated.
Why won't we
Well-
just do those instead of the whole entire district, just do those? certain-
Well, here's the thing. We're still going to try. We're still going to try anyway. If the state says no and we want to just do it locally, we can still do that.
We can say,
But for national, we might just want to pick a couple sites out that haven't changed.
Last year with the other.
Right. So I mean, it is kind of like a happy medium in the middle. I mean, they're not going to get national, these property owners, if they want to get grants and loans and stuff. But for our purposes of protecting what's out there,
What's
what's
And
left, I didn't want to say that, but protecting what's out there.
I've seen it, it's not really,
But actually, local takes precedence over national.
well, I mean,
And we learned
it
that,
might be
so
good just to pick out the
we can do
places.
that.
Notwithstanding, though, there are some houses that have not been changed very much either around there. I noticed one just the other day, backing up to the ballpark, that hasn't been. It looks like it was not changed at all.
Like a time machine.
Yeah, like in a time
Yeah,
machine.
the backyard is part of that. Yeah, I know, I'm.
Hmm. There's a couple of them too. I mean,
What we might wanna do is just walk that area.
On some of those, if we could talk them into wanting to have a plaque on their home. it would be
Right,
cool.
and like, kinda like we designated all the stuff around there,
Yeah.
all the other properties.
so this is a large district, the North Villarica Residential District. This would be extending from Church Street all the way in a northwesternly direction, essentially. This one we might need to also talk about. They really cast a large net on a couple of these districts, and I don't know. And you guys tell me. I don't know the answer to this or not on what is our priority. But are we really trying to place 50s ranch houses and 60s ranches in a historic district? I mean, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world either if they do get caught up in a district, because they're essentially, that we have in our design guidelines section where they're basically kind of carved out in a sense, like they're a part of the district, but they don't have to actually live up to the design guidelines requirements though.
Unless it's that age.
Here's my thoughts, is if they're, yeah, they're getting to be old enough. Yeah, there's that specific 50s, 60s architecture, but unless it was like a neighborhood of them,
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I would see protecting that type of aesthetic and architectural environment, but hodgepodge in the 50s, 60s, next to a 30s, next to a new home, to me, the 50s and 60s would be the first one out.
Mm-hmm.
In my time.
I wanted to look at it again.
Yeah,
Because
that's right.
Happy Valley
And
is
it needs,
in that area,
Mm-hmm.
will
needs
that have
updating
any
or-
bearing on the Marchman House that we would have designated?
Well, yes, because they would have, it'll be national if we
Yeah.
get national, and there will be grants and loans available to it.
And will that give us a little bit more pull with the Happy Valley Church because of this?
Probably not, because it already is individually designated, so any changes are already required to come to the HPC.
You missed a
But
few
I mean, as
again.
far as them,
Hmm?
You missed a few again. Right here.
they'll tear them down.
Oh, no, that's a different district.
You
We'll
really?
get to that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. So South Villarica Residential Historic District, so it extends to a piece of our cemetery, backing up to Wilson Street. It includes the, oh gosh, my mind just went blank, on Wilson, the old house. Wick's Tavern.
oh yeah,
It includes Wick's Tavern. It includes, it wraps around that, the only building on the south side of Bankhead in that area there that's kind of blocked out that we go around, that's the building that's next to Evans. That was redone, that's empty. But other than that, Evans would be in it and things like that as well on Bankhead. It stretches to the other side of South Carroll. Basically, all of South Carroll going into town would be a part of that. So the West Villarica, this is the one that you were waiting for, Sarah. The West Villarica Residential District is the next one. So that's basically almost all residential uses except for maybe like a couple. There's some in those houses that are on Main Street that are commercial, and I think there's one on Bankhead there.
yeah.
All right, so that gets a lot of those older houses on Peachtree Street. And the last one here, West Villarica Commercial Historic District, which kind of like zigzags up and through Bankhead Highway area. Now, that one is probably also gonna be a bit of an issue, because it's like, what are we really saving in this district? You know, you have a, kinda like a Spanish mission style
Oh, it's ugly.
thing on Bankhead Highway that's like pink. And you have a couple, like the florist stuff that's on East Montgomery or West Montgomery, I believe it is. It's like, yeah, it's all over the place. Some of those buildings, I think one of them was like a mill or something that's on the south side of Bankhead.
Yes.
That one might be definitely worthy of saving, and a couple others, but it's not a whole lot.
So, I mean, the guy who did that wanted to look at it become Spanish more as a thing, but I probably wouldn't object to it so much if they changed the color of that.
Is,
That pink
is the Wicks Tavern considered a commercial?
putrid.
I guess so, yeah. It's in a mixed-use zone, commercial mixed-use. It can float back and forth between residential and commercial. That's a new feature of this zoning ordinance, in case everybody doesn't know, but if you're in the CMU zoning district, you can float back and forth.
Yeah.
So a lot of these uses might change. Where am I? So we have vacant parking lot, a bunch of buildings that are not historic in nature, vacant parking lot, not historic in nature. This is probably historic. You have a gas station here. You have an empty lot on one of these. The other is Wicks Tavern, which is already designated. It's like you're not really saving anything with this. This is kind of really a waste of time, but
So again, we need to go through and just pick, right?
we might need to cherry pick this one, definitely. That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Yes. Speaking of, when we did the list of homes, that year where we chose 10, and the Marchman House was in one, was the Wicks Tavern in it as well?
The 10? Yes.
In the 10?
Mhm.
Making sure.
Maybe something will have to do with it, with both of those districts. Just kind of
Cherry pick them. Yeah, I think that's the case. But, you know, if you move back to this one, it's the same situation. You have a lot of 50s ranches in here. I mean, a ton of them. So, I mean, it's something we might want to think about as well. I mean, they didn't craft these very well. There's a much easier way of just kind of like wrapping around some of these. Maybe get a couple non-conformings in there, you know, but because if you don't have a choice, if it's bordered by it, but they didn't do that.
Throw something else out.
Uh-huh.
What we have learned, and we need to get Sarah into one of these conferences where she can learn more about what we're doing as historic preservation. But from Rome, from Chateau Elan, and from even the virtual one now, people are always, and we're talking about the whole state of Georgia, looking at not just buildings, because as, you know, why do all things matter? We're also taking a look at areas. And one of my biggest things is where I live. Now, my home obviously is not historic. In fact, there was a sign that says, in 1897, there was nothing happened, then there was historic. But the area is, because when the gold went to the Lonigan, then before Stockmont came, then we had Craghorn and all of the other people who were the farmers. Edge Road is named after one of them. You've got all of those coming down South Wilson Street where we are, because that whole area was farmland. And Allen's home, which is historic, was basically, according to the neighbors who lived there and knew that, and my neighbor said that her cousin lived in that house. It was the house that was like the overseer for all of the cotton areas.
Mhm.
When I had somebody come from the city and from Douglas County when we first moved in, because I wanted to know about the rocks and things, what they told me is that the acres that I have and the people there, that the stone in there was where people would get behind it because they were cooking their food, they were attending to the cotton fields. And those became bunkers for them with the stone, out of the wind. And the fact that the way the trees are, that they grew up after that. But we also have the part of the boulders that go up to Stone Mountain as part of the Brevard Falls. And there's 4 of them in my backyard that we've uncovered, and they're all in there, but that gives you that whole thing in there. So basically, what we've learned through the conferences is that not just buildings, but areas are also historic. And we need, I think, because you've got Edge Road and you've got all those others in there, are really important because
I like that back.
it adds to the history. When the boll weevils came and destroyed the cotton fields, then fortunately is when Stockmar came in, and then he used, for the Flying S Ranch, and then because he was also an inventor, did so many other things that add to this, which is what makes Villa Rica be a real good pioneer city. But those are areas, not a building. So I think that sometimes we have to also remind ourselves that it's not just a building, it is also a place or an area that is historic, and that's become something else. When we had the Christmas tour a couple years ago, people who were, the 120 who traipsed through my house, when we said, yes, you were in historic buildings off Rockmart and going to some of those older homes that are, got plaques on them. But our area is important because of what it was. And then not too far from there, and right across the street from Allen, is an Indian trail. And people don't know that road next to the church and between the church and Spring Street was an Indian road. And that's historic as well because it was before everybody even lived here. And of course, we've got the baptismal fount, which is only one of 2 in the whole state of Georgia that we know of.
Are those documented?
And that, although it's historic, the people don't want us going there, but we did manage to make it be historic as a local site. So we've got other things to think about, I think. Would you agree, Sarah?
Mhm. Well, Thomas Dorsey was the whole big Indian trail. It was called the Ridge Trail.
Interesting.
No,
Okay.
no,
Those people in Thomas Dorsey are crazy anyway.
Yeah, still in pumpkins. I don't even,
Run down
she gonna catch
that
his
Indian
hand.
trail between
All right, so let's move on to what's involved, right? So we're gonna have to do probably we have a heightened
Oh, I love this.
level of what's the word I'm looking for, of just of what we need to do in order to get these districts to be designated, more than most communities probably would. And that's not related to any of the rules or for the state level or nationally or anything like that. It's really local in nature. I'll just kind of say that. On the bottom there, I kind of put the hint for us. There's only a requirement for 50% buy-in. So as long as you're over that 50%, you should be okay with getting a district, but not in Villa Rica. Villa Rica, if you can read the tea leaves from the last time we had a designation, the 10 individual sites, if you could recall the current mayor's, his comment to me was, did you guys go out there and walk these districts?
That's what I just said.
Or walk these 10 sites? Yeah, exactly.
Going to
And
Fullerville and walk.
I said no, we didn't, because that's not required, because it was only local designations, right?
But it's something that we wanted to do before you even came when we were doing it.
Yes, I remember
And
you
the
saying
problem
that.
is that when we had that one first symposium, we didn't have enough time to actually advertise it, but yet, when we had it at City Hall, we did have a lot of people there, and that was the first time that you came, and that was when you were brand new and did it.
Now, the problem with that is, and that's why it's on here twice, a public open house, and then actually walking the districts, because you can't confirm that everyone that lives out there is actually there.
Right.
And that was the mayor's point, that, there's no way, we shouldn't be basically potentially hog tying someone's property rights in any way. And that's my terms, that's my words, but hog tying someone's property rights and what they can do with their property unless we surveyed the entire area by going out there and having face-to-face conversation with them and confirming.
Just that property owner or the entire district?
Oh, the entire district, every house, if it's a business, gotta go to the business. If the business is not owned by the person,
Even if it's not a historical property or something?
that's right.
what it takes is
So
a lot
the-
of PR, because like I said, when only
Yeah,
three
like
of
a
us
petition,
were
so to
at that
speak.
meeting.
You know, that's the thing. We're not. No one is ever going in any town, any city, any town, anywhere. You're never going to get 100% buy-in on anything.
No.
It's just not. That's just we work in the public
We would
domain.
need
It's
at
not
least
going to happen.
50% people in the entire district.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
When the country,
When we-
Washington D.C. only requires 50.
That's the owner. You're not to say that the people that you're gonna be talking to is necessarily the owner, renter, / leaser,
Yep.
whoever.
So what I plan to do in that situation, especially, and we're going to see this with the South District when we do the locals. That's going to be our first time doing this. Walk door to door, but basically none of them own their properties out there.
Right, they're leasing, they're pretty much renting.
Exactly.
Do we have like a map, the dates of these properties, who owns them and all that?
Oh yeah, on
We
Q
could-
Public,
We
yeah.
would have to line by line to know what we're walking into.
Right, but the good news with downtown is we would be able to. Basically all the buildings are owned by the same groups of people.
Pretty much.
So if we get buy-in from like one or two or three of them, you know, and they all own multiple stretches of buildings, it's much easier that way. So downtown's a little different. So, but the residential districts, if there's rental houses or something like that,
So what you're saying is that if this guy owns 15 of these properties, we don't have to go in all 15, or we just need to talk to him about those 15?
The good thing
it's
is
a
that-
great question. And
Or
honestly,
we cast this whole net and say, okay, we talked to him, those are null and void.
see, I don't know how our politicians are going to feel about if we get 100% buy-in from the landowners, but the business owners don't want to, because the business owners are the ones that have to.
Here's what I would say. I would say
deal with
talk to
that.
both of them.
well,
Oh yeah, definitely. We're gonna have to do
Thomas Hart,
everything.
Most of the time lives in Arizona. He goes there more than he's here. But I did talk to him about 2 years ago, and he was well open to anything that we wanted to do.
Okay.
Because before we didn't, the south side, they could have done whatever they wanted to do, but we didn't know that. And so that's when Rose Norton came as representative for him to change the color of the building, because we actually said yay or nay for the colors. And she's the one who gave us the initial color palette. She worked on that for us. Then we also had the lights that are on the building. We had to approve of those lights. So we actually helped them make that be historic. The only problem is that some of those buildings along there that he owns, the Brenners went ahead on their own and did some of the things that they shouldn't have done, but we can't do anything about it until it becomes historic. So even though somebody has put the wrong kind of paint over brick, and it needs to come off, but they can't use a pressure washer because the brick is historic, and it's a special type of thing to get that paint off. It's because I went up there, you can actually peel it right off the brick. But we can't do anything about it because it's not historic.
Now, the district we're talking about is, of course, what's that, the south side?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's the one we're first going to do this step by step.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
these are the pretty much steps.
Basically, yeah. This is going to have to be our steps, and how we're going to have kind of like a public engagement process, if you will. But after we go through the public hearings and HPC and the council votes on it, then they would become. We would have to send a confirmation out too. That's the other thing that's not on here, but you guys don't have to worry about that. That's in the office stuff. But we would send out a confirmation to. Basically everyone in the district. So it's a lot of mailings. You see how big some of these districts are. I mean, these are mass
National,
mailings.
Or is this for the local?
Well, it's actually for both. So that's why I said mailings. So the third main bullet there, mailings to each home, certified and regular. I put ×2 because we have to do it twice. We have to do it not just for local, but for national as well. So even though they're going to be at the same meeting, happening at the same meeting, we have to put it twice
And on top
for
of
each
it,
property.
even though they're certified, they get them back. Sometimes people don't have it, then they've got to go back and go through the ones that did not respond or that were returned.
And see, that actually gets me kind of to the point, it goes back to what I was saying before about, I don't know how our politicians are going to feel about if I got certifieds back, because I don't know how everyone else does it in City Hall, but I always send certifieds and regulars. Because if the certifieds come back and the regulars don't come back, that's considered good notice to a court. But I don't know how our politicians, I have no idea if they're going to accept that, because even though I'm doing it by law and I'm doing it the way it's supposed to, that doesn't mean it's done the way that they want it to be done,
Maybe
so.
we need to walk through first before you send those, to make sure.
Oh, definitely. We have to. That's why it's number one
Right.
on the list. It has to.
But it's gonna entail a lot of PR as well to get the interest of people, to
Right.
make them want to do it.
Right,
You
yeah.
can't-
And you can't just have us make it historic, they gotta have a benefit to this.
Not
Right.
everybody looks at the internet. I mean, I know that in my own neighborhood. They don't do it. Some of them don't have a computer, they're too old, or they're not interested. You know, Joe sends out that really neat note
What's their incentive?
but people really read that. They don't even know what was going on.
That's what we gotta sell them, is that incentive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll have a list of stuff together. We'll distribute some literature on our walk and things like that. But the main and the reality is, most people are going to be concerned about their taxes going up because they're designated historic, which obviously is not the case. That's taxes and historic have no
Right.
bearings with one
The
another.
biggest thing, and I did what I said I would not do. But with my Facebook page just starting now, there's more responses on Clint Chance's email or Facebook and all of the other people than there is in the city. The city website is minimal compared to what you're getting on the rest of us, because then when you start to resend it to somebody else, then all of a sudden you get people who lived here forever who are now on Facebook but will never even touch the city website.
Mm-hmm. So I'll move on to the next one. We talked about the upcoming dates, right? So this is just reiterating those dates. The South Villarica District, December 15th, and that will go on to council January 12th. And January 19th for the HPC would be the North Villarica Commercial District, and it'll go on to council February 9th. Again, these are all potential dates. I mean, they're not written in stone right now. I mean, if we run into a crunch and we're getting close to it, if we have to do a special meeting or something like that, we did that the last time, then I'll let you guys know as soon as I know. So we all know the difference between national and local?
Yeah, and they're in our handbooks.
Yes, they are in the
All those
handbooks.
are in the handbooks too.
Mm-hmm. So state is something we don't really talk about, but state and national basically just kind of goes together. The state just follows whatever the federal government's decision is on the topics. They don't really get involved with local other than just issuing designation letters back to us, response letters, which we received on all 10 sites we surveyed. So some things to remember. The state's review period is 45 days for those designation response letters, so that has to be factored in as well. So if we don't hear back from the state for the national until, let's say, the middle of November sometime, and it's going to take 45 days for the public hearing or for the state to get back to us for the designation letters, that can become a problem. So with realizing this, I know that I have to do the designations for the local to send off to the state to get their responses beforehand. So that's being moved up in my agenda tremendously, so I can hurry and get that part done, so we're not sitting around waiting again for the state. So it's it's a lot of this is just waiting. You'll see.
Is this just from COVID, or is this standard procedure?
I think it's just standard procedure.
Okay.
Yeah. So the HPC has to submit to council within 15 days. I believe it's 15 days. It might be even shorter than that. It might be 7 days or so. I'll go back and check our HPC enacting ordinance.
Yeah, it's also in your book.
Yeah.
Like, feet to the fire, quick, hurry up. get
Yeah,
done.
it has to be done, but obviously our schedule doesn't match up,
Right.
because when they're doing these one meeting a month thing,
Right.
it's not gonna happen. And me calling a meeting, a special meeting for the city council, it's like an active Congress. So I can't, it's like, we gotta figure that whole thing out. That's why I'm saying about the special meeting for us,
Yeah,
so we don't mess up their schedule.
yeah.
The narrative, designation reports, current photos, historic photos, history write-ups, all the stuff that you guys know that goes into all of this. It has to be included as well. And the local has a lesser threshold of review critique compared to national, when it comes to the state. So, one thing I didn't put on here, and something that we definitely need to discuss, because this is kind of new, is the South Side Historic District. There's a different project that's going on, and it is very active right now that I'm working on, related to the alley in the back of it. That alley would potentially be fixed up in phases. It's actually a 5-phase project. And the first phase is really just taking that South Carroll wing all the way up to Doyle's,
Yes.
and really turning that into a community-oriented space.
Kind of like Douglasville did.
Yes, but we're gonna be better than Douglasville,
I
though.
know.
But what
They did a good job of that.
they did an excellent job. I stole some
I grew
ideas
up in
from
that
there.
city 'cause walking through those streets, it was kind
Really?
of, the buildings were bad.
Wow, I didn't know
They really-
that.
Yeah, that was awful back in there.
Wow.
And if the city can change
That,
and put all of the
that would
wiring
be
and stuff in
amazing.
the alleys and not in the front, it's gonna even add to it so much more.
Well, that, bringing people in is what you
Yeah.
want.
Right, exactly. We need to kind of
Do
shake
that
things up
historic district,
downtown,
right.
get some outdoor seating. We have tiny sidewalks. People can't even eat out on the sidewalks like in a lot of cities and towns. We're trying to create an outdoor space. And it might sound crazy during the times of COVID that we would want to create a community, like a space where people would actually gather together, but,
And you see some of the towns where they have that ability, and it looks nice because they have moved all of the electrical stuff
That's behind
to the
Gabe,
alleys
right?
behind them.
Right.
And so that opens up the
Mhm.
whole thing.
Yep.
and The ambiance is like
That's
unbelievable.
a tight little spot.
so just like that area, or just like our historic, the 50% buy-in versus 100, it's gonna be kind of the same thing with, the alleyway. It's being that it's an easement, one party to the easement can shut the whole show down.
Right.
So,
Gabe, they have
we
to-
don't want to make them upset.
No,
And doing these two projects at the same time,
I think it would be, it would be lucrative for their business to bring that
oh,
in.
definitely, it would
Why-
be.
Why would you not want that?
Because they don't want to lose the parking, they worry
I
about
know.
loading, things like that,
I
the
know.
kind of practical things, but we've found workarounds to that too, when
Time-
thinking about this.
Time limits in and out, when and where.
Exactly, either time limits or setting up a loading zone at the beginning of it,
Right.
just like every other
Every
city
city
that
has
has
a
an alley or a pedestrian walkway, it'll be the same
Hours
situation.
of 7 and 9 a.m.
But you're also looking at funding and everything. I mean, years ago, or even as long as 4 years, when they were thinking about doing a parking deck,
I think
but
it's
the
a brilliant
cost to do
idea.
a
That
parking
would be-
deck
that would
is.
look-
Oh, you don't have to tell me. My last town, we built a parking deck. We'll never pay it off. They'll never pay that off ever. The debt. All they're doing is servicing debt. They're not even paying it off.
Yeah.
And it's at full capacity all the time. So, it's just bad accounting, unfortunately.
$20 a
But
spot.
Sounds good, but
yeah. So what I'm getting at with this alleyway thing is we don't want to make them even more upset. So, and the timing is coming together at the same time. I didn't plan that. I wish if I did, I would never have done it. But the reality is, the alleyway. We're going to be approaching them for easements.
That's button heads right there.
That's right, and we're gonna be asking these folks to give up, not the business owners, but the business, or the,
I think there's a good way around that to work, verbally communicate that, hey, this is gonna bring a lot more business to your area.
well, the alleyway will, but the historic preservation part of it is gonna be running at a head with that, because they're gonna be equating the two together. And if they want, let's say they want the alley improved, but they don't wanna be in a historic district, then what you're gonna get is they're gonna say no to the alleyway and no to the historic district.
Well, Downtown Dallas did the same thing, so.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. Luckily, we only have a
Their
handful.
sidewalks, their whole community.
Oh, yeah.
street
Yeah, it's
lamps,
beautiful.
Kinda, it's a beautiful area down there too.
It's just with ours, with that side of downtown, if we don't do anything with the alleyways right now and hold off, which that's not even a item that's willing to be discussed at this point. It's
Wow,
like,
okay.
it's coming. They're gonna be doing this. We're hoping to get this thing up and rolling and ready for the public on Earth Day. So we don't have a lot of time. We have to get out there, get these easement agreements signed. I'm trying to get them to the council by sometime in December. So that's another project. I mean, there's a lot of projects that are just popping up right now. So I'm putting the pieces together, and I'm like, oh God, the HBC has been waiting so long to get these designations. And then this comes up on top of that. So I'm sure I'll see what I can do to figure out. So where we don't shock these people into thinking that we're just like, taking over all their rights
Take your
and,
business, turn it upside down.
Right, exactly. So it's something that I'm not worried about the actual historic aspect of fixing up an alley though, because all we're really doing is painting and cleaning, planting plants and
Right.
cleaning the place up, putting some cool stuff in there. I won't tell you guys all the cool fun stuff that we're planning, but
Some old street lamps, stuff like that.
right, yeah. So I've been working with the councilwoman and business owners already and stuff. So it's the next 2 months is gonna be very intense with that, with trying to
You think it's
convince
gonna
these
happen, or you
owners.
think that's just still-
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm without a doubt now. If we get the easement agreement, the city
That
has
would
to
bring
control the
more
easement.
Businesses too, down in that area,
Right.
so.
Food trucks maybe, things like that. Who
Yeah.
knows? We don't know.
Savannah does that, we need to do that down here.
Exactly. Yep. I heard about that, the food truck area in Savannah. So that was it. I don't have any more stuff yet or
Well, that was
for you
cool,
guys,
huh?
but the alleyway is just, that thing we have to kind of all think about. I don't want to push this back because you guys have been waiting in line enough.
Hey, I think,
So
like you said, it's gonna work hand in hand, I think it's a good idea.
I hope it does, but I'm not so optimistic that it will. I just feel like people are going to be like,
Nah.
you're making both changes at the same time. You want us to
You're
sign
making
over
it
the
historic
easements.
and-
Yeah. Because the tenants, if you think from a tenant's perspective, honestly, if I'm a tenant out there, the city's gonna control the back of my building, they're gonna control the front and what it looks like, the signs, the awnings,
Yeah, but in the flip coin of that, we're also bringing in, we're updating your business and the backside of your business. You're gonna be bringing in more people that's gonna, that may wanna
You're
go
right.
back in there and try and go see your business.
You are right.
Thank you, Ron. I mean, and as I told you, it was important for us to know at least where we were starting and where we were going. And I know that next month, when you've got it better finished and completed, that at least we'll have that framework in our minds about what was going on. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is your.
And- Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn, Shane, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you,
All right.
Ron. That was very
Yeah, thank
informative,
you.
brother.
Kristen, thank you.
Kristen, you can go home, get some sleep.
got Cub Scouts, so I'm gonna go.
Okay.